Hello everybody, my name is Paul LeClerc and it's my privilege to be the president of the New York Public Library and to welcome all of you this morning to the Stephen A. Schwarzman building and to the Children's Center in this gorgeous, gorgeous room for what's going to be a wonderful morning as we talk about a new book, a wonderful new book, and as we unveil the original stuffed animals that Christopher Robin played with, that A.A. Milne's son played with himself, that he had up in the tree and all kinds of things like that. And you're going to see they look pretty old, because they are very, very old, and they're outdoors, and you know the way you had stuffed animals or have stuffed animals, and you drag them everywhere in the subway. Well, he did the same kind of thing with these. So they're in a case, and they're kind of fragile. Some of them have back supports, as you'll see, but they're really, really important. And for the grown-ups, let me just say that there are two things that we have out for the public to see at the library. Upstairs we have the Gutenberg Bible, really important, and here we have these wonderful creatures that have inspired children and storytellers and parents for decades and decades and decades now. Lots of people go to see the Gutenberg Bible, that speaks to the mind, but I think even more people are going to be coming here now that the Pooh creatures are beautifully installed, as we'll see in a few minutes. And this is something that really speaks to the heart for us who are more than 8 or 9 or 10 years old. It speaks to nostalgia, it speaks to our own childhood, it speaks to our having been read to as children, it speaks to our having moved into the wonderful world that A.A. Milne created. Now, today, there's a lot of concern about what we call provenance, that is, how things came into a collection and how legitimately the ownership of those things is. So I'd like to give you just 3 or 4 sentences about history. These are really the New York Public Library's legitimately, even though they come from England and they're an important part of the literary tradition of Great Britain. How did they come here? Well, A.A. Milne himself gave them in the late 1980s to John Dyson, who was the publisher of E.P. Dutton, that company, which is now part of Penguin. And Mr. Dyson decided that the best place for them to be was the New York Public Library. And so he was given them as a gift by the author himself, and so he owned them, and then he legitimately gave them to the New York Public Library. Now, a few years back, when President Clinton was in the White House, I got a call one morning from the press. And Tony Blair, then the Prime Minister, was coming to Washington for a state visit to the White House. And the rumor was out that Tony Blair was going to ask for the United States to repatriate the Pooh figures and make the New York Public Library, give them back to England. And there was an enormous amount of press hysteria about that. So I called somebody we know in Washington who worked for us and had him call the White House, and it was not true at all. But it became a big fake story, and so then Mayor Rudolph Giuliani came here. He had an immense press conference. I've never seen so many cameras. And he defended the right of New York to keep the Pooh figures. I'm doing the same thing now in a less flamboyant, self-serving way than he did. Don't broadcast them, please. That's off the record. And it was kind of, it was exciting in its own way. But this morning, we're here for 2 reasons. We're here because there's a wonderful new book that's come out as a sequel to the Pooh stories, and that's going to be talked about by the publisher rather than by me. But then we're also here to unveil the new home that has been created for these wonderful, wonderful objects. And thanks to the very, very great generosity of Penguin and company, there is a wonderful new environment, a new set of murals that have been created that recreate the world